Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
And to be like, okay, Canelo fight doesn't happen. Let me get a Charlo. Let me get a David Morrell. David Morrell has been calling out Benavidez for a really long time. So what do you think?
The only one is Morrell.
Gotcha. What about Demetrius Andrade?
He will not sell his seat.
A seat? It won't sell a single seat?
That's correct. I'm sorry. Because his attitude is so bad that nobody cares for him. And we're talking about pay-per-view. Maybe he doesn't have the right people with them from the beginning to build his career. Maybe he didn't have an advisor how to build a career, not only winning, if not advertise how good he can be his fighter. In the case of Boo, the only thing he wants is to win.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if people doesn't like it. He wants the W on him. He doesn't want to take chance. Even though the last fight, he tried to, push a little bit and change the style. But doesn't mean that with one fight, he can get the love of the people to pay to see him.
Long story short, Samson Lukowicz, David Benavidez's longtime promoter, isn't even considering the possibility that David might fight Demetrius in September if things don't work out with Canelo, making Demetrius's decision to circumvent a Janibek Alimkhanuly fight,
to not fight Zach Parker.
I know what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me that the second time around, Frank Warren's offer for the fight was substantially less than what it was the first time out.
Because the first time out, they had to bid against Matchroom, whereas the second time out, the lone bidder for the show, the Zach Parker versus Demetrius Andrade show, it was Queensbury and just Queensbury.
They didn't have to worry about anybody else bidding on the fight, so they didn't break the bank, winning the rights to it. And as a result of that, the money the second time out was a lot less than what it was the first time for Demetrius. And as a result of that, he walked away from the fight.
Some people thought it was warranted. Some people thought it was justified. I myself wondered.
I wondered how that business decision would age Demetrius Andrade, having a rich history of poor business decisions. I wondered how this would all end up, because while he didn't stand to make a small fortune boxing Zach Parker, he certainly didn't make one boxing Desmond Nicholson either. The difference is fighting Zach Parker came with an added incentive, WBO interim status, whereas fighting Desmond Nicholson...
What the hell did he get out of fighting Desmond Nicholson?
You bite the bullet and you fight Zach Parker, you beat him, you become mandatory challenger to Canelo Alvarez, whereas you beat Desmond Nicholson, and what do you get?
Nothing.
Not a David Benavidez fight, that's for goddamn sure. Demetrius Andrade went over there to the PBC to get closer to those fights with David Benavidez and Jermall Charlo.
That guy's wishing upon a star if he thinks he's going to get Jermall Charlo in the ring anytime soon. Jermall hasn't fought in 2 years. In all likelihood, if and when he returns, it's going to be in a tune-up fight, not a fight with Demetrius.
And you see what Samson Lukowicz is saying? He is completely ruling out the possibility of a Benavidez versus Andrade fight in September. And if Demetrius isn't boxing David Benavidez, and he's not boxing David Morrell, and he's not boxing Jermall Charlo,
that means that the decision to not fight Janibek as a reigning champion, a reigning defending champion who could have commanded the lion's share of the pot, that means not fighting Janibek and not fighting Zach Parker, not biting the bullet. All of those were more poor business decisions.
And Demetrius Andrade has a long and rich history of making poor business decisions. I don't often agree with things that Samson Lukowicz said, but he hit the nail on the head. Demetrius Andrade, in spite of being in his mid-30s, a two-division champion, unbeaten.
Nobody built his career.
Anyways, he has no career. No signature wins, no memorable fights, no memorable nights. He's a two-division champion who never beat a champion in order to be a champion. Every title he ever held was vacant.
And he thinks he's hot shit. He thinks he's something special because he's an unbeaten fighter, but maybe you're an unbeaten fighter because you never want to bite bite the bullet. You never want to take any risks.
How the hell are you supposed to get the paying public on your side if you're never in fights that people want to see? And you want to argue that, well, you want to fight Canelo.
Oh.
Surely people want to see that, right?
Yeah, you and 10 other guys want to fucking fight Canelo. Take a number.
Samson Lukowicz is echoing the sentiments I often express right here on this channel, that Demetrius Andrade was in no position to reject as many interesting fights as he has rejected over the years. What could have been the Jermel Charlo fight, the Lara fight, the Matvey Korobov fight, the Sergey Derevyanchenko fight, the Yanni Beck fight, the Parker fight. He made no effort to fight Daniel Jacobs.
He's in the Who Needs You Club, and the Who Needs You Club is often mistaken for the High Risk, Low Reward Club.
He's not a high risk. He's not a member of that club. What Demetrius Andrade is, unfortunately,
He's irrelevant.
at least no more relevant than, say, David Morrell, who David Benavidez may end up fighting in September.
But the difference, I think, between dealing with David Morrell and dealing with Demetrius Andrade is David Morrell won't cost you as much money. He won't come with these same demands and entitlement issues that Demetrius Andrade would come with. He is a two-division champion.
He's more accomplished than David Morrell, and more accomplished than David Benavidez.
But that hasn't translated into dollars.
Managed to stay an unbeaten fighter for a very long time, not fighting in interesting fights that people wanted to see him in. And you could argue that Jaime Munguia should have fought him. I don't make excuses for that. I agree. The same with Golovkin. But what about all the fights that he rejected?
I get the odd guy that likes to say Demetrius Andrade had his reasons, but they didn't.
The odd guy that wants to play him the violin for decisions that he made that led him here.
His decisions. He's a grown man.
Canelo, in some circles, small ones, gets criticized for not fighting Demetrius. Are those critics going to keep the same energy when it comes to David?
When it comes to his promoter, Samson Lukowicz.
In the case of Boo Boo, the only thing he wants is to win.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if people doesn't like it. He wants the W on him. He doesn't want to take chance. Even though the last fight, he tried to, push a little bit and change the style.
Mm-hmm.
But doesn't mean that with one fight, he can get the love of the people to pay to see him.
Mm-hmm.
But if he all his career, the only thing he did is win fights. He never was in a danger zone. And that is the mistake of the management and the mistake of the trainer, not to take chances, because boxing is a show.
Yeah.
So you want to see action.
Mm-hmm.
How many action you saw in his career?
Once again, I don't often agree with things that Samson Lukowicz said, but he really did hit the nail on the head. It's not enough to just win fights. Win fights that nobody's even asking you to be in.
Can you really accuse David Benavidez of ducking Demetrius Andrade and taking the path of least resistance when he may end up fighting David Morrell? He's a high-risk, low-reward guy. He's an unbeaten guy, a dangerous one.
You call that taking the path of least resistance, or is it that Demetrius Andrade's entitlement issues?
That's a big part of why he's in the Who Needs You Club.
Benavidez versus Morrell gets the same attention that Benavidez versus Andrade gets, believe it or not. Same attention, maybe more.
With a guy that's not as difficult to deal with.
Oftentimes when we have this conversation, it's in reference to a Canelo Alvarez fight. Now, the same applies to a Benavidez fight. It's the same deal with the same talking points, the exact same criticisms. So will Canelo's critics keep the same energy for David that they keep for Canelo when David's team says, who needs you?
Who needs Demetrius Andrade? For what?
I said it then and I'm saying it now. He should have fought Yanni Beck, at least with Yanni Beck. He could have commanded the lion's share of the pot as a defending champion, and he should have bit the bullet with Zach Parker if he didn't want to fight Yanni Beck, because you are not in a position to reject as many fights as you do.
You painted yourself into a corner thinking you had the luxury of choice. You don't.
You say that the money wasn't right for the Zach Parker fight, but I'm pretty sure they didn't pay you an arm and a leg to fight Desmond Nicholson.
With Zach, you would have got WBO interim status. With this guy, you got nothing.
It's what I've been saying for months, in spite of a few boo birds who want to play this guy the violin. Spare me.
You are not owed understanding, and you are not owed patronage. This is a business. It's your job to generate interest.
My honest opinion is that he shouldn't have swerved all those fights for all those years. Now this is the end result. Nobody needs
Demetrius Andrade. He can box a bit, but a lot of guys can box.
Your mistake was thinking you were indispensable. Your mistake was thinking you were special.
Usyk accepted the challenge. He went public and he said 70-30 is an ugly deal. But I do accept it because I want this fight to happen.
That's the part of the story that old fish eyes Frank Warren doesn't like to tell you about, that Usyk accepted the proposed split for the fight, even though he knew he stood to make more money in Saudi.
But please, Tyson, pay £1 million to Ukraine and you have a fight. And this never happened. Tyson never accepted this.
It's another angle of this that Frank Warren doesn't like to bring up, that Usyk had demands of his own, and all things considered, doesn't seem like it was too much to ask.
This is just one of the reasons. The other reason, which was manipulated, is the rematch, where Tyson people approached us with the rematch, where Usyk knew the rematch is on, and he accepted 70-30 with the rematch, having in his mind. But then suddenly it appeared that no rematch.
Alex Krassyuk very recently sat down and spoke to IFL TV at length, has insisted that Saudi's Skills Challenge Entertainment will soon be making a formal written offer to Tyson Fury for the undisputed heavyweight world title fight in December. It will be a take it or leave it offer, and whatever the offer is, we already know, at least according to Bob Arum, the Saudis are willing to put up more money for that fight than it can generate anywhere else on the planet.
Right.
So money
is not an object. Money is not an issue. You're not going to make more with this fight in the United Kingdom at Wembley than what you stand to make in Saudi. Thus, there's no reason for you not to take it.
put up or shut up time, and Tyson Fury has been backed into a corner.
His greed, his own greed.
I mean, it's not like he's got to take less to fight the guy in Saudi. He stands to make more. Way more than he'd make at home.
You can't say that this is Team Usyk giving Tyson Fury a taste of his own medicine, because Tyson Fury stands to benefit from this just as much as Usyk. They both get to make a lot of money.
So what's the problem? Are you that big a control freak that you're going to let this fight go sideways again later on this year because you can't have it all your way?
You kidding me?
About the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, where 4 belts are at stake, this is something different. And you cannot compare it with anything. There are no analogs of this. And this means that this is a unique fight, a unique occasion. And all the principles that been working in the past are not applicable anymore.
Alex, I think what they might, to counter that, what they might say to that is, of course, Usyk Dubois was won at $8 million. If Fury and Dubois went to purse bids, Frank Warren believes that would go for about $30 million.
Omar, if a grandmother has a beard, she would be a grandfather.
It's almost like Umar is making excuses for Tyson Fury. I mean, that's what that sounded like.
If you're going to bring up the value of Fury versus Dubois,
You're going to say that Fury versus Dubois fetches more money than, say, Usyk versus Dubois.
okay.
Fury versus Usyk fetches more money in Saudi than it does in the UK. If that's the argument that you're trying to make, Fury's faction of fans, that contingent, is spending far more time on marquee value than they should.
Because if it's about value and it's about money, the fight gets you more money in Saudi.
I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
If there are no ifs, there is a fact. And the fact is that Tyson Fury is desperately chasing for an opponent to fight, and nobody wants to fight him.
Don't forget that Alexander Usyk accepted the 70-30 split.
Then Tyson Fury tried to change the rules of engagement. He tried to remove the already agreed upon rematch clause.
That's a fact. And there is some reason behind it. And what is the reason? The guy has to look in the mirror and find the root of this reason. You have to respect your opponent, because your opponent is the one to bring value to yourself.
If you negotiate your smart ass out of a fight, you know what your marquee value drops down to? Absolute zero. Because the value of a fight that isn't happening?
Zero.
That's where Tyson Fury's at. You don't have the luxury of a Joshua fight to fall back on, and you screwed the pooch with Alexander Usyk. So tell me what you're worth now, Tyson Fury.
And if you neglect, if you are arrogant, and if you treat your opponent without respect, it means that your value is getting lower.
He's not wrong. In disrespecting his fellow champion, one of only two champions at the weight, demanding the lion's share of the pot, now Tyson Fury isn't getting the lion's share of anything. And if all we get are more excuses later on this year,
Tyson Fury's marquee value will take another critical hit.
it's already taken several critical hits as a result of his constant mind games and shenanigans. If he would have treated his opponent and his requests with perhaps a little bit more reverence, then maybe the fight would have happened in April in the United Kingdom and Fury would have had home field advantage. But the way the situation was handled...
Listen, I'm of the opinion that the reason that situation was handled that way is because Fury didn't want that fight. I've been telling it ad nauseum. He doesn't want to fight Usyk before he fights AJ because there's a good enough chance that he loses to Usyk. And if he loses to Usyk, he loses whatever leverage he has with AJ.
All Tyson Fury's got going for him is that he's the unbeaten WBC champion. If you fight Usyk and Usyk wins, that changes and you ain't got no belt to use over AJ, to lord over him.
That's why he wants these fights to happen in a certain way, and that's why I'm convinced he mishandled the Usyk situation deliberately, hoping that Team Usyk would walk away. What he didn't anticipate
Was that people would blame him, not Usyk, because Usyk doesn't have a reputation for being difficult in negotiations. He does. Tyson Fury is synonymous with fights that fall apart. This is just another.
And now they're set to make a take-it-or-leave-it offer that in all likelihood is in excess of anything Tyson Fury stands to make anywhere on the planet fighting anyone.
What are you going to tell the world? What are you going to tell the boxing world if the Prince and the people at Skills Challenge make you an offer and you reject it? What are you going to tell them? That the Prince lowballed you?
Who do you expect to believe that?
You don't take this fight in December. What you do take is another critical hit because the boxing community at large is tired of these games, and so is Team Usyk.
Everybody is really.
We've got to go through all this just to get you in the ring with the same guy that AJ fought twice. He made it look easy. Why don't you?
He didn't run from the smoke. Yeah, he might have lost, but he didn't run like you're running.
Unless you're under the impression we think you're doing something other than running from this fight. That's what it looks like.
You don't take this fight in December. That is a duck.